Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Fernando Fernandez Feliciano. You know the rest. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, Joe Biden will be the 2020 Democratic nominee for president. And I, for one, could not be more, how can I say this in a way that doesn't get me monetized on YouTube? Disillusioned, to say the least. Not just because he's a terrible candidate, which of course he is, but because, in my mind, he would pretty much hand Donald Trump 4 more years on a silver platter. Now, I know what a lot of you Democratic partisans are going to say.
Oh, please, you're just angry that I'm voting for Biden instead of Sanders, and by large margins, by the way.
Nope, just made that up.
Of course a Bernie or Trumper would say this. What an absolute load of bullocks. I mean, you're kinda right. It's just that Joe Biden's gonna be the one who wins in the landslide. You know, like your current president, Hillary Clinton. Do you remember that? Do you remember the polls? The wonderful polls.
Yes, anonymous tour dude, whose name I'm not gonna mention because I'm not that much of an a-hole. I do remember that. And believe it or not, at this very moment in time, back in 2016, Hillary Clinton was actually in a much stronger position than Joe Biden currently is. And we all know how that ended up taking place. But I mean, it's way beyond that. It's way beyond the fact that the polls tend to tighten up in the months leading up to the election. Joe Biden is just a uniquely flawed candidate. And, you know, when you are facing a stronger version of Donald Trump, which we will discuss shortly, you simply cannot afford that. You simply cannot afford that. You couldn't afford it back in 2016 when he was simply an outsider insurgent. You sure as hell can't afford it now that he's the incumbent. So, with all of that being said, here is why I think Donald Trump will not only win, but smash Joe Biden. Number 1, Donald Trump is the incumbent. Now, I just kind of alluded to this already, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but the fact of the matter remains, Donald Trump's incumbency is a colossal advantage. I mean, think of it this way. In the past 10 election cycles, the incumbent president has only lost 2 of them, with both elections being marked by terrible economies and a plethora of other factors which greatly diminished the incumbent's chances at the time. Now, I know what a lot of you are going to say. The economy's doing really bad right now. And it is true, the economy is indeed doing really bad right now. And if it stays this way until the election, then Donald Trump has pretty much no chance of getting reelected. Here's the thing though. It's not going to stay this way until the election. At least not exactly. Here's what I mean. As Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Sandy states, it is very likely that we'll see a double-digit pop in GDP as people go back to work. It is also very likely that we'll see a double-digit surge in the third quarter, after the virus begins to temper down during the summer. And not to mention that the manufacturing sector, you know, the main source of jobs in the Rust Belt, the states that matter the most this election, is probably going to be the one sector that recovers the fastest. Oh, and by the way, do you really think that Trump and the GOP are not going to pour everything they can towards quote-unquote fixing this economy? Of course they will. They will even outflank the Democrats from the left if they have to. Whatever it takes to create the false perception that the foundations of this economy are strong. And as all of us political junkies already know, in politics, perception is reality. If Trump is perceived to have rescued the economy, it's over. It doesn't matter that the foundations of the economy are weak. It doesn't matter that it can't handle the plethora of serious challenges that we're going to be facing in the coming decade. What matters in the short term for most of the electorate is that they can get back to work and that the stock market looks, at the very least, moderately healthy. As long as that happens, that's what the majority of the electorate is going to take into consideration once they cast their ballot on election day, no matter what conventional wisdom says. If anything, Trump should be more worried about the increasing death toll as a result of the virus, especially if it starts affecting deep red rural counties rather than just deep blue cities. That is the truth. Number 2, Donald Trump's approval rating has been surging as of late. Again, Donald Trump is in a much stronger position right now than he was back in 2016. Well, at least some people are not idiots on Twitter. Despite botching the lead up to the pandemic, President Trump is actually perceived to have done a pretty good job at handling it so far. Something, by the way, which is also apparent in his approval rating, which is at the highest point since his inauguration. And it makes sense. While President Trump is on national television on a daily basis, reassuring the American people and looking more presidential than ever, Joe Biden is either nowhere to be found or making an absolute fool of himself on live television. I mean, seriously, what do you expect when the supposed opposition is weak as hell and is not offering anything of substance to address the crisis other than Orange Man bad? Not good if you're the Democrats. By the way, this brings me to my third point. Joe Biden is quite simply not Joe Biden anymore. I mean, seriously, harken back to 2012 when Joe Biden was debating Paul Ryan at the 2012 BP debate. It was a bloodbath. Not only did Paul Ryan make an absolute fool of himself, but Joe Biden absolutely obliterated him. I mean, it wasn't even close. Joe Biden laughed at him. He laughed at him. He laughed at the utter absurdity and the utter stupidity of Paul Ryan's plans. And it worked. If this was the Joe Biden who was the presumptive nominee today, Donald Trump would literally have no chance at all. However, that is not the Joe Biden that is the presumptive nominee today. This is the Joe Biden that is the presumptive nominee today.
Good evening, everyone. And all Americans should be grateful to the Speaker's leadership and for Minority Leader Schumer's leadership. We're going to work in the direction of making sure that we make sure that everyone, in fact, has access to education. I've endorsed the loss of that you would have, in fact, any doctor's bill you have. But even I can't do that for another a year between now and November, or actually January. They can't build any factories or anything within 1 mile of the estuary of the Delaware River and the Atlantic Ocean and Chesapeake. And so the whole point of this is if we can do a lot to deal with endangered species, we have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what. Why doesn't he just act like a president? That's a stupid way to say it.
Donald Trump was asked us.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, probably best I don't. I just can't figure the guy. It's like watching a yo-yo. I shouldn't have said it that way. It's like watching.
It feels that way. I want to.
We need to activate the reserve corps of doctors and nurses, beef up the number of responders dealing with these crushing cases. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that we are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing. Not spoken of. We can make a personal protective equipment. Look, here's the deal. We have to do what we did in the 40s and the 20s in 2020, tending to our elderly loved ones. This is the United States of America. Okay.
Do you really think that this Joe Biden can handle Donald Trump in a 1v1 debate? Pretty self-explanatory if you ask me. Number 4. Joe Biden's record is absolutely atrocious. I mean, it just is, okay? It just is. There really is no other way to put it. Joe Biden is the embodiment of a corporate Democrat. He voted for the Iraq War, he voted for NAFTA, he supported the TPP, and he quite literally wrote not only the terrible 1994 crime bill, but the terrible anti-worker 2005 bankruptcy bill. Oh, and he's also a Wall Street puppet. Do you remember the last time Trump ran against a Wall Street puppet who voted for the Iraq War, who supported NAFTA, who supported the TPP? Didn't go so well for the Democrats, didn't it? By the way, this leads me to my next point. Joe Biden has a ton of skeletons in his closet, man. I mean, everything from the Ukraine scandal to his corrupt brother to the numerous accusations of inappropriate touching and most recently sexual assault are going to be things that are going to come back to bite him. I mean, do you really think that Donald Trump is going to be as nice as Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg, for example? Do you really think that Donald Trump is going to call Joe Biden my dear friend Joe? Do you really think that's going to happen? Of course not. Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump does best. Even if it's hypocritical, he's going to call out the shady family dealings and he's going to bring up the inappropriate past. And it's going to work because Donald Trump does not pretend to be holier than thou. Joe Biden, on the other hand, does. And that mask is going to be peeled off and it's going to be ugly. How did that work out for the Democrats last time? Not good. Number 5. Joe Biden has literally no excitement surrounding his campaign. He just doesn't. And not only that, Donald Trump, on the other hand, has a way more excited base of support. As a recent poll by ABC News and The Washington Post found, only a mere 24% of Biden supporters are very enthusiastic about supporting him. That compared to 53% of Trump supporters who are very enthusiastic to support him. Even Hillary Clinton, yes, Hillary Rodham Clinton, generated more excitement among her base than Joe Biden does. Well, at least Joe Biden is generating more enthusiasm than Mitt Romney or John McCain did, but he's not generating more enthusiasm than Hillary Clinton did. By the way, speaking of that, what do John McCain, Mitt Romney, and Hillary Clinton have in common? They all lost. Curious, isn't it? And just when you thought things couldn't get worse for Joe, well, they do. The very same ABC News Washington Post poll finds that 15% of Bernie supporters would vote for Trump. Wow. For context, in 2016, 12% of Bernie supporters ended up voting for Trump. Oh, and by the way, it's not like this is only a trend on the national level. This is also very prevalent in many swing states, like Florida, where 19% of Bernie supporters would vote for Trump. This simply does not bode well for Joe Biden, especially when you consider the fact that many of those very same Bernie supporters are young people. People often forget, but part of the reason that the Democrats were able to do so well in the midterms was that young people turned out in record numbers. Joe Biden has done terribly among young people. And whether you like it or not, the fact of the matter is that if you're a Democrat in a general election in the year 2020 running against a Republican candidate who excites his base like Donald Trump, you need young people to turn out at the very least at a decent rate. Again, people often forget, but many of the victories which catapulted Democrats to the top in the 2018 midterms were incredibly close. There is indeed a good chance that if young people had not turned out at the rate that they did, the Republicans might have been able to keep their majority in the House. The Democrats might have even lost more Senate seats, if that's even possible. All of this goes to show that Joe Biden currently faces a very, very difficult road ahead in the 2020 general election. It's by no means impossible for him to win. As a matter of fact, it would be foolish for Republicans to underestimate him. My next video is going to be all about how Joe Biden can actually still win this thing. However, the fact of the matter is that President Trump currently stands as the overwhelming favorite to get reelected come November. A fact that, barring something unprecedented, I simply do not see changing anytime soon.